The sound of the zipper tearing shut on the suitcase was loud in the quiet bedroom. It sounded like a fabric scream. I stood by the door, holding a cup of lukewarm coffee, watching my wife of 7 years pack her life into 2 Louis Vuitton bags I had bought her for our anniversary last month. "Don't look at me like that, Ethan," Jessica said, not breaking her rhythm. She was folding silk blouses with a precision she never applied to our marriage. "This isn't sudden. You know it isn't. We've been existing. Not living." "Existing?" I asked. My voice was calm, almost detached. It was a defense mechanism I had perfected over years of high-stakes boardroom negotiations. "We live in a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. You drive a Range Rover. We take vacations twice a year. Most people would call that living." "That's exactly the problem," she snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were cold, hard flint. "It's suburban. It's predictable. You come home at 6 p.m. You talk about supply chains and market stability. It's boring, Ethan. You are boring." She walked to the vanity and swept her jewelry into a travel pouch. "I need fire," she continued, her voice softening as she looked at her reflection. "I need someone who takes risks. Someone who commands a room. Someone who doesn't just manage money, but makes it happen." A car horn honked outside. It was an aggressive, rhythmic honk. Jessica's face lit up. It was a look I hadn't seen directed at me in years. It was excitement. Adrenaline. "That's him," she said, zipping the last bag. "The guy who commands the room," I said. She grabbed the handles. "His name is Julian. And yes, he does. He's a regional director, Ethan. He just closed a massive deal. He drives a Maserati. He's taking me to Paris next week. First class." I moved aside to let her pass. I could have stopped her. I could have begged. But I knew something she didn't. I knew the name Julian. I followed her downstairs. The front door was open, letting in the humid evening air. Parked in my driveway, blocking my modest Lexus SUV, was indeed a Maserati Ghibli. It was bright blue. Loud. Obnoxious. Leaning against it was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that produced arrogance. He wore a suit that was too tight, a watch that was too big, and a smile that was too wide. "Hey, beautiful!" Julian shouted, ignoring me completely. "Ready to blow this popsicle stand?" Jessica practically ran to him. He kissed her, a performative, possessive kiss, his hand sliding low on her back while he made eye contact with me. He wanted me to see it. He wanted to mark his territory. "You must be the ex," Julian said, breaking the kiss and looking me up and down. He smirked at my polo shirt and jeans. "Ethan, right? Accountant? Middle management?" "Something like that," I said. Julian laughed. It was a bark of a laugh. "Yeah, I can tell. Look, no hard feelings, buddy. Some guys are built for the grind, and some are built for the glory. Jess here, she needs the glory." He popped the trunk of the Maserati. I noticed a small sticker on the bumper. Apex Fleet Leasing. "Nice car," I said. "Yeah, it's a beast," Julian bragged, tossing Jessica's delicate bags into the back with careless force. "Just picked it up. Company perk. When you bring in the revenue I do, the company treats you like royalty." "Which company is that?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Apex Global," Julian said, puffing out his chest. "I'm the new senior director of North American sales. Just got the promotion letter yesterday. Huge sign-on bonus. Stock options. The works." My heart didn't skip a beat. It actually slowed down. "Apex Global." "Apex," I repeated. "They're in logistics, aren't they?" "Logistics, tech, Infrastructure. We do it all, Julian said, talking about the company as if he had built it himself. We're about to merge with a massive conglomerate tomorrow. I'm actually meeting the owner, the ghost, they call him, in the morning. Rumor has it he's handing out executive equity packages. I'm going to be a millionaire by noon. Jessica looked at him with pure adoration. See, Ethan? That's ambition. Julian is going to be sitting at the head of the table. Is he? I asked. You wouldn't understand, Jessica said, shaking her head with pity. You're happy with your 401k and your safe little life. Julian is a shark. Julian slammed the trunk shut. He walked around to the driver's side, revving the engine before he even fully sat down. The exhaust roared, shaking the quiet suburban street. Don't wait up, pal. Julian yelled over the noise. We're celebrating tonight. Champagne is on me, well, on the company card. He laughed again, put the car in gear, and peeled out of my driveway, leaving tire marks on the asphalt I had resealed last summer. I watched them disappear around the corner. The silence returned to the house, but it felt different now. It didn't feel empty. It felt clear. I walked back inside and locked the door. I went to the kitchen and poured the lukewarm coffee down the sink. Then, I opened the fridge and took out a bottle of sparkling water. I walked into my home office. It was a small room, unassuming. A simple desk, a laptop, and a shredder. To Jessica, this was where I did boring spreadsheets. I sat down and opened the laptop. I scanned my fingerprint. The screen came to life, displaying the logo of a company, Omnicorp. Underneath the logo were the subsidiaries. A long list of companies owned by the parent holding group. Third on the list was Apex Global. I clicked on the HR and payroll portal. I typed in a name, Julian Vane. His profile popped up. Position, Regional Sales Manager, probationary. Status, active. Salary, commission-based. Notes, pending disciplinary review for unauthorized expense account usage. I looked at the disciplinary review tab. Apparently, the company card Julian was using to buy champagne tonight had been flagged 3 times this month for non-business expenses. Then I looked at his schedule for tomorrow. 9 a.m. All hands executive meeting. Presentation by the chairman of Omnicorp. I leaned back in my chair. Jessica was right about one thing. Julian was going to meet the man who made it happen. She just didn't realize that man had been sleeping in her bed for 7 years. I wasn't an accountant. I was the majority shareholder and chairman of Omnicorp. I had kept my identity hidden from the lower-level subsidiaries to maintain objectivity and, frankly, to avoid people like Julian sucking up to me. I lived quietly because I hated the noise of wealth. Jessica hated the quiet. Now, she was going to get all the noise she could handle. I picked up my phone and dialed my chief of staff. Mr. Sterling. Her voice was crisp, immediate. Sarah, I said. The meeting with the Apex sales team tomorrow morning. Is Julian Vane on the attendee list? Yes, sir. He's listed as a presenter. He's supposed to pitch the Q3 strategy. Good, I said. Make sure he has a front row seat. And Sarah? Yes, sir. Prepare the termination paperwork. But bring it to the meeting blank. I want to fill in the cause personally. Understood. Shall I send a car for you in the morning? No, I said, looking at the empty spot in the driveway where the Maserati had been. I'll drive the vintage Aston Martin tomorrow. I think it's time to stop being boring. I hung up. I walked to the closet in the guest room, the one Jessica never opened because she thought it was just old coats. I pushed aside the winter jackets and unlocked the biometric safe in the back. Inside hung my bespoke suits. The ones that cost more than Julian's entire wardrobe. I pulled out a navy blue suit with a subtle pinstripe, a white shirt with French cuffs, and a pair of solid gold cufflinks. I ran my thumb over the gold. Tomorrow, the shark was going to discover that he was swimming in a tank. And the owner of the tank was hungry. The Aston Martin DB5 purred as I pulled up to the glass and steel monolith that was the Apex Global headquarters. It was a vintage machine, silver birch, radiating a kind of class that a neon blue Maserati could never achieve. The valet, a young man named Leo who had worked there for 2 years, dropped his clipboard when he saw the car. He didn't know it was me at first. He just knew that whoever was driving this car owned the pavement. I stepped out. The Italian wool of my suit caught the morning light. I adjusted my cuffs, feeling the weight of the gold links. "Good morning, sir," Leo stammered, rushing over. I don't have a reservation for a DB5, but I can make space in the VIP lot." "Keep it out front, Leo," I said, handing him a $100 bill. "I won't be staying long. Just long enough to take out the trash." Leo looked at my face. His eyes went wide. He recognized me from the company intranet, the picture that only appeared on the Omnicorp holding page, the one titled Chairman E. Sterling. Mr. Sterling?" he whispered. "I didn't know." "I mean, welcome back, sir." "Quietly, Leo," I said, putting a finger to my lips. I walked into the lobby. It was cavernous, designed to impress. And sitting on a leather sofa near the security turnstiles was Jessica. She was scrolling on her phone, looking bored but expensive. She wore sunglasses indoors. She didn't see me. She was too busy typing, probably bragging to her friends about how she was currently sitting in the lobby of a billion-dollar company waiting for her executive boyfriend. I bypassed the reception desk. The security guard saw the black keycard in my hand, the master key, and immediately straightened up, nodding respectfully as I swiped through the private executive turnstile. The elevator ride to the 40th floor was silent and swift. My reflection in the polished metal doors stared back at me. No more polo shirts. No more apologetic smiles. This was the face of the man who signed the checks. When the doors opened, Sarah, my chief of staff, was waiting. She held a black leather folder. "They're all in boardroom A, sir," she said, falling into step beside me. "Mr. Vane has been speaking for 10 minutes. He brought a guest." "A guest?" I asked, not breaking stride. "Yes, sir. He insisted that his partner be allowed to sit in the observation deck. He said he wanted her to witness his ascension." I almost laughed. Perfect. We reached the double mahogany doors of the boardroom. I could hear Julian's voice booming from inside. "And that, gentlemen, is why we need to cut the overhead on the logistics team. They're dead weight. Just numbers on a spreadsheet. We need aggressive sales. We need hunters, like me." I nodded to Sarah. She pushed the doors open. The room froze. 20 heads turned. At the far end of the long granite table stood Julian. He was mid-gesture, pointing at a projection screen that showed a graph going up. He looked annoyed at the interruption. "Excuse me." Julian barked, not looking at who had entered. "I am in the middle of a crucial strategy pitch. You can't just waltz in here and—" He turned. The words died in his throat. It sounded like he had swallowed a golf ball. I walked into the room. I didn't rush. I walked with the slow, deliberate pace of a man inspecting his property. The other executives, the CEO, the CFO, the VP of operations, all stood up immediately. Chairs scraped against the floor as they rushed to show respect. "Mr. Sterling," the CEO, a gray-haired man named Robert, said, bowing his head slightly. We weren't expecting you until the closing remarks." "I decided to come early, Robert," I said, my voice projecting clearly without shouting. "I heard there was a presentation about cutting dead weight. I'm very interested in that subject." I walked to the head of the table. Robert scrambled to move his chair out of the way, offering me the seat of power. I sat down. I placed the black folder on the table. Finally, I looked at Julian. He was pale. His mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. He looked from me to the CEO, then back to me, trying to process the glitch in his reality. The boring husband was sitting in the chairman's chair. The accountant was being served water by the CEO. "You," Julian whispered. "Ethan. What are you doing here? How did you get past security?" The room went deathly silent. The other executives looked at Julian with horror. "Mr. Vane," Robert hissed. "Address the chairman with respect." "Chairman." Julian let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "Robert, come on. This is Ethan. He's my girlfriend's ex-husband. He's an accountant. He probably snuck in to beg for his wife back." Julian looked at me, regaining a sliver of his arrogance. "Listen, buddy, this is embarrassing. I know you're hurting, but you can't just crash a board meeting. Security." He waved at the door. No one moved. I leaned forward, clasping my hands. "Julian," I said softly. "Do you know who owns Apex Global?" "Omnicorp," Julian said, confused. "Everyone knows that. And do you know who owns Omnicorp? Some ghost. Some billionaire recluse." "Hello, Julian," I said. "I'm the ghost." Julian blinked. No. "No, that's impossible. You drive a Lexus." "I drive a Lexus because I don't feel the need to compensate for anything," I said. "Unlike some people who lease Maseratis on a company card that just got declined." Julian's eyes widened. "What?" "Sarah," I said. Sarah stepped forward and tapped her tablet. The projection screen changed. Gone was Julian's sales graph. In its place was a detailed list of credit card transactions. Club Velvet, $2,400. Maserati lease down payment, $5,000. Louis Vuitton, $3,200. First class tickets to Paris, $8,600. "This is the corporate American Express issued to the regional sales office," I explained to the room. "It is intended for client dinners and travel. It is not intended to fund your affair with my wife." I looked toward the side of the room. There was a glass wall, soundproof but transparent, separating the boardroom from the observation deck. Jessica was standing there. She was pressed against the glass. She couldn't hear us, but she could see the screen. She could see the list of charges. And she could see me sitting at the head of the table while her shark stood there sweating through his cheap suit. She looked terrified. "Now, Julian," I continued, opening the black folder. "You mentioned earlier that you were the new senior director. That you had a promotion letter." Julian swallowed hard. He was shaking now. I was told, it was verbal." Robert said. "Robert?" I looked at the CEO. "I never said that, sir," Robert said quickly. "Mr. Vane is on probation. His numbers are inflated. We were actually discussing his termination next week." I looked back at Julian. "So, you lied to Jessica," I said. "You told her you were a director. You told her you were rich. You told her you were taking her to Paris." I picked up a pen. A heavy, gold fountain pen. "But you can't take her to Paris, Julian. Because you can't afford the ticket." "Ethan, please," Julian stammered, his hands held up in surrender. "Look, man, it was just a game. I didn't know who you were. If I knew you were the boss, I never would have touched her. I swear." "Oh, I believe you," I said coldly. "You're not a shark, Julian. You're a scavenger. You only take what you think is unguarded. I wrote a single word on the document inside the folder. Terminated. But here is the problem, I said, standing up. You stole company funds. That's not just a firing offense. That's a felony. I pressed a button on the intercom console. Send them in. The doors opened again. But this time, it wasn't tea and coffee. 2 police officers walked in, followed by the head of Omnicorp Legal. Julian turned to run, but there was nowhere to go. He backed up against the screen, his own fraudulent expenses glowing behind his head like a halo of guilt. Ethan! He screamed, his voice cracking. You can't do this. I have rights. Jessica. Jess, tell him. He looked at the glass wall. Jessica was backing away. She was shaking her head. She saw the police. She saw the end of the dream. She can't help you, Julian, I said. She's just realizing that she packed her bags for the wrong trip. I turned to the officers. Gentlemen, this man has embezzled over $50,000 from my company in the last 30 days. You have the evidence on the screen. As the officers grabbed Julian, handcuffing him in front of the entire board of directors, I walked over to the glass wall. I looked at Jessica. She placed her hand on the glass. She was crying. She mouthed the word Ethan. I looked at her. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just looked at her like she was a line item on a budget that I had decided to cut. Then, I reached up and pulled the blinds shut. The police escorted Julian out through the service elevator to avoid a scene in the lobby, though the damage was already done. The board meeting resumed, but the energy had shifted. The executives looked at me not just with respect, but with a healthy dose of fear. I signed the authorization for the external audit, shook hands with Robert, and walked out. I didn't take the service elevator. I took the main lift down to the lobby. I knew she would be there. Jessica wasn't the type to walk away when there was still a chance to salvage the situation. When the elevator doors slid open, she was standing right where I left her, near the security turnstiles. Her sunglasses were off. Her eyes were red. She looked small against the backdrop of the empire I owned. She rushed toward me, but Leo, the valet who was now back at his post near the door, stepped in her path. It's okay, Leo, I said, walking past the security desk. Jessica ran to me, grabbing my arm. Her grip was desperate. Ethan. Oh my God, are you okay? That was insane. I had no idea he was a criminal. I thought he was a rising star. He was a shooting star, Jessica, I said, not slowing down. Burned bright, burned fast, and crashed. I was so scared, she said, falling into step beside me, trying to match my stride. He lied to me, Ethan. He manipulated me. You saw that, right? I was a victim here. I stopped in the middle of the atrium. The morning sun was streaming through the glass ceiling, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. A victim? I asked, looking down at her. You weren't a victim when you packed your bags this morning. You weren't a victim when you told me I was boring. You were excited. You were cruel. I was confused. She pleaded, tears spilling over. I was having a midlife crisis. I didn't mean any of it. I love you, Ethan. I love our life. The house, the suburbs, it's peaceful. I miss peace. You miss safety, I corrected her. And now that you know the safety comes with $1 billion safety net, you suddenly find it attractive again. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a set of keys. Not the Lexus keys. The Aston Martin keys. Ethan, please, she whispered, touching the lapel of my suit. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can take a trip. You have all this power, we can do anything. Just take me home. I looked at her hand on my suit. Then I looked at her eyes. I saw the calculation behind the tears. She was already redecorating the penthouse in her mind. I am going home, Jessica, I said, gently removing her hand. But the locks were changed an hour ago. Her face went pale. What? I called the locksmith before I left, I said calmly. And I cancelled the joint credit cards. And the Range Rover? It's leased under Omnicorp. I've ordered a repo team to collect it from Julian's apartment complex. But, where am I supposed to go? She stammered. I gave up the lease on my studio. I have nowhere. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. You wanted fire, Jessica. You wanted risk. You wanted a life that wasn't predictable. I gestured to the glass doors leading to the busy street outside. Being homeless is very unpredictable. Good luck. I walked away. Ethan. She screamed, her voice echoing off the marble walls. You can't do this. I'm your wife. My ex-wife, I called back without turning around. My lawyers will be in touch. They're not boring, either. I walked out to the curb. Leo opened the door of the Aston Martin. I slid into the leather seat, the engine roaring to life with a deep, throaty growl. As I pulled away, I checked the rearview mirror. Jessica was standing on the sidewalk, watching the silver car disappear into traffic, looking like a traveler who had missed the last flight out of a war zone. The cafe on the Champs-Élysées was crowded, but the waiter had saved my usual table in the corner. Paris in the autumn was exactly as beautiful as they said. I sipped my espresso and opened the Financial Times on my tablet. Omnicorp stock was up 12% since the restructuring of the Apex division. I scrolled down to the legal section. There was a small blurb. Former tech executive sentenced to 4 years. Julian Vane had taken a plea deal. Embezzlement and wire fraud. He wouldn't be seeing a boardroom or a Maserati for a long time. And Jessica? I didn't need to read the news to know where she was. My lawyer had given me the update last week. She was living in a small apartment in Ohio with her sister, working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. She sent emails occasionally. Long, rambling apologies. I had a filter set up. They went straight to trash. Is this seat taken? I looked up. A woman was standing there. She was elegant, holding a book on architecture. She didn't look at my watch. She didn't look at my shoes. She looked at my eyes. No, I said, smiling. It's free. I'm Claire, she said, sitting down. I hate to disturb you, but you looked like the only person here who was actually enjoying the silence. I value silence, I said. I used to have a very noisy life. And now? She asked. I looked at the bustling street, at the golden leaves falling from the trees, and felt the weight of the master key in my pocket. Now, I said, signaling the waiter for another cup. Now, I'm just enjoying the view. I wasn't the boring accountant anymore. I wasn't the ghost. I was just Ethan. And for the first time in a long time, the ledger was balanced.